So I am joined here today with my two good friends, Farhan Iqbal and Shahrukh Rizwan Abid. It's been a long time since we've all gotten together and recorded a conversation or talked about anything. And usually, when the three of us get together, it usually means we have some sort of big announcement or we have some sort of very controversial topic that we would like to dive into. This time, it won't be a controversial topic per se, but it will be an announcement. So, by the grace of Allah, the three of us, have come together and compiled a book that Farhan Iqbal had kind of authored, and myself and Shahrukh Rizwan Abid had co authored. The book is titled The Folly of Atheism. Book title suggests that this is a book that is about atheism. So before I kind of dive into how this project came to be, and talk about the history and the background of this, I just wanted to say my assalamu alaikum to Farhan Iqbal and Shahrukh Rizwan Abid. Assalamu alaikum, Rabian.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum salam.
So I think it was around four-ish years ago in 2016 when Dr. Ali Amjad Rizvi released a book titled Atheism Muslim, A Journey from Faith to Reason. And I saw that book at chapters. I picked it up. I digested it completely, absorbed it, read it over a couple of times, and I became very intrigued at the message and the structure and the layout. Prior to this, I was always very interested in exploring and seeing what criticisms of Ahmadiyyat exist out there. So, I'd come across, when I was in high school, there was a Diary of a Cult Girl, that talked about different anecdotal things. But anytime that, we would openly talk about these things and openly question these things, it always came down to, well, this is very anecdotal. This is the person's experience. Most of the titles were more or less about other people's experience of Ahmadiyyat, other people's experience of Islam. And it didn't really seem pertinent to myself. And then, picked up this book, and it was a very thorough investigation, very thorough critique of some of the things that are, that seem problematic about Islam, specifically Islam. And it was only a matter of time before I thought, somebody is going to have these same criticisms about Ahmadiyya. And after that, I think a couple of years after that, 2018, 2019, I believe the first kind of person who kind of publicly came out was Adil. Came out with his blog about Dream to View, the Dream to View blog. And he had kind of come out and said, I am no longer Ahmadi. And then shortly after that, Sohail Ahmed came out with his video, coming out video of, I am not Ahmadi. And this kind of really fueled, the urgency and the need of, having a book, having a structured argument about some of the claims that, these various authors had written. And then, Farhan, what was your take, when you had kind of come across the same content?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're the one who pointed out the book Atheist Muslim to me, and I got it immediately. I think it was back in 2016 or something like that, end of 2016. And it was interesting because up to that point, I knew of atheists who had converted from Christianity, like I wouldn't say converted, but renounced Christianity or Judaism or something like that. But it was interesting to see that, and I think the title itself was meant to say that I am an
Mhm.
atheist who was formerly a Muslim. So it was like really putting it out there. And I actually encouraged Shahrukh to also get a copy of that book, and he also read it. And So that's where I think we were like, and again, it's because of the podcast. And I just want to mention that even this podcast was a result of one of the instructions of our Caliph, Khalifa Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, who said, go out and find out new ways to reach out to people. And the podcast was actually a result of that. And then through the blessings of, Khilafat, we were able to eventually work on these different projects, and eventually came across Ali Rizvi. I didn't actually read the book right away. Um, and you were right. I mean, we had Adil come out, and Adil was on this podcast as well. I think about a couple of years ago, because we wanted him to have some sort of discussion with us. Um, and then Sohail was there, but to be fair, Sohail would say that he was there before all of these guys. He would say that he was back in the 1990s. Late 1990s, when he wanted to talk to some people about his doubts, but he didn't get much of a response, and he was, I would say, he felt that he was shunned in some way, and he stayed quiet. So you can say he came out publicly in the year 2019. But I do remember that back in 2016, I saw his Twitter account, and I engaged with him even back in 2016. But at that time, he was anonymous.
Yeah.
To be fair, Adil was also anonymous at first, and then 2019 is when he formally published his book, The Things That We Think but Are Too
The
Afraid
things that we're afraid to say, we think, but we're too afraid to
to
say.
say, or something like
Yeah.
that. And he came out with that book, and that book was actually written back in, I don't know, 1999 or something like that, but it was publicly released through PDF in ebook format in 2019. So that's when we started responding. You and I also had some conversations. So our audience, at least on the podcast side, are aware of our interaction on that in that regard. But by the grace of Allah, all three of us had the chance to put a project together and write a book. And Alhamdulillah, we are pleased to announce today that this book has been published. It's actually with me right now. It's called The Folly of Atheism, and it responds to all these different things that we felt were important to respond to, right?
Mhm.
And of course, Shahrukh was there with a lot of research and a lot of work that he put into this book. Do you want to say something to start off? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so I actually had an opportunity because I actually came across well, my interaction with XMDs was that actually it was last year when um our mosque here in Brampton, we had summer students, and one of the summer students came up to me, and I would just sit with them because they're really cool guys, and we would just talk. And one of the summer students, his sister, she's like, there's this book that's been going around social media. It was by Nuzul Tanif, and and she said that a lot of XMDs are actually like reading that book, and they're quoting from that book and presenting it. So I was like, okay. So I sat down and I actually looked at the book, right? So I got the book, I downloaded it, I started reading it, and at first I was just a bit taken back, right? I'm like, wait, like the way she's making her arguments are it's pretty good.
Well written.
Um, but then when I actually started to like actually look into the book, and I started like using her references that she had, provided to discredit the Promised Messiah. When I started looking at those references, I found a lot of holes in her arguments, and I was able to, and someone who's not that smart, was able to dissect a lot of her arguments and answer them, exactly. So it was what I noticed was it was all about the presentation, right? So that was the first thing that I realized, that like what Maarij said, that there was no actual concrete, argument against us. It was more just like, thing. But because of the presentation was so good, and it's something which appealed, or which was an easy read. So I guess people were like inclined towards it. But so yeah, that was actually one of my first things. And then Suhail came out with his video, and I remember a few Dam had told me this person has come up with a video and things like that. And again, same thing. I watched his videos. I read his book as well, and same thing. I realized that it was just there was no concrete argument. There were no concrete arguments against us. It was more like, I hate the culture, or this happened with me, and a lot of personal experiences. So, that was like my first, I guess, link, or my first, the first time I came across these kind of things.
Right. And so Hale would say that we forced you because we became so popular that you had to respond. I do enjoy that argument, but honestly speaking, I mean, yeah, it has some truth to it, no doubt. But personally, I have been engaging a lot with the atheists and ex-Ahmadis and ex-Muslims, and I've been doing it for many years, and this is going back 2006, 2007. Even I was on these forums when I was still a student, and I used to engage with a lot of people of other faiths. So naturally, when I find something like this, there was this website long ago. It was a cult website or something like that. I wasn't there a lot as well until it was so much. I was posting so much that they started actually, um, blocking some of my responses or censoring some of my responses. And that's when I felt like it's a space where I'm not being heard. And not even like, I mean, if you're censored because you said something negative or derogatory, that's one thing. But to say something which is academic, but just being removed because they want to weaken your argument, that's what I felt. But so I have been interacting a lot, and I don't know whether that's my personal interest or personal place where I've focused on, that has enabled me to come across this. And I think you, Maarij, between the two of us, the podcast was also an area of interest, right? It was not like we were told by the Jamaat that go ahead and start a podcast. We were just thinking of doing some kind of tabligh, some kind of outreach where we can interact and go from there. So I think that's where this has come to be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and most of my own experiences in university, in high school, um, most of the people really cared about the atheist arguments more so than perhaps the interreligious arguments about, usually when we talk about Ahmadiyyat, we talk about the death of Jesus Christ, we talk about, coming of Khilafat, coming of, um, you know, um, all sort of theological based arguments that we say, look, from the Quran, we can prove this. Khatam al-Nabiyyin is another one, right? The finality of prophethood. And I found that, university going students living here in the West, you can't really, that's not a starting conversation with most people. Most people, the starting conversation is, do you believe in God?
Yeah.
Why do you believe in God? What kind of God do you believe in? What do you think what's God's role in our current world? Does he have influence over the world? All those things. I think that generally speaking, we care more about, like in the West, we care more about those questions. So they require more attention.
Yeah, definitely. And things like in this book as well, we try to focus on those kind of topics that people are talking about. So the things like what about the gender relations in Islam?
Mm,
This is something
mhm,
that is pretty common. I think a lot of people, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you, again, going back to the university example that you gave, you meet a Muslim, and one of the first things you're going to realize is that there is segregation. There is
mhm,
women are dressed differently, right?
mhm,
Especially those could be considered more devout Muslims. They're going to be dressed. They're going to look different, right? You look different from most men of your age with the big beard and everything. Or head covering, right? The one I'm wearing also.
Mhm.
These kind of things, are there. So we touched upon that with the gender relations in the book. And one of the most common things that I've heard since a young age is about female witness testimony, right?
Mm.
That's a
Mhm.
topic that comes up a lot. So we we,
Mhm.
we talked about that, and other such topics that are related to the community life of a
Mhm.
Muslim. So we're trying to address those things that people are talking about nowadays,
Mhm.
that seem to be controversial about Islam nowadays. So we try to address many of those, and of course the question about God, that's where the book
Mhm.
starts with, is
Yeah.
about who is God, and how do you believe in God, and what is the evidence for
Mhm.
God from an Islamic perspective, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we started off with. And of course, where Maarij contributed is where the community engagement and how groups work. For instance, there's an interesting chapter that Maarij has contributed to the book, which talks about how groups function, which I really enjoyed. So
Mhm.
I appreciate the effort of Maarij as well. Well, we didn't put names on each chapter because it was more of a collective effort, but
Yeah.
definitely there are some chapters where one of us had more of a contribution as compared to others. But Alhamdulillah, at the end of the day, I'm satisfied. And I also wanted to just mention quickly that, and this is important because this is a publication of Khudam al Ahmadiyya. What is
Mhm.
Khudam al Ahmadiyya? If you look at the back of the book, also they have the logo here of Khudam al Ahmadiyya. It's meant to point out that it is a publication of Khudam al Ahmadiyya. Khudam al Ahmadiyya, the translation, the English term would be Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association. So those of our members of our community who are between the ages of 15 and 40, the young members, they are the male members. They are part of this youth organization, Khudam al Ahmadiyya. So under the direction of the Sadr, the president of Majlis Khudam al Ahmadiyya, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association, we worked on this project, and under his supervision, everything was put together. So it's pretty much their publication, and they were very helpful throughout the process
Mhm.
of how to move forward, and also pushing us a little bit to get through it faster. So
Mhm.
Alhamdulillah, it's to see your own book on the table is quite a blessing, I would say. Definitely
Mhm.
a blessing. And still Maarij doesn't have a copy, but he'll get it soon.
Yeah. No, I will get it soon. There was another interesting feature about this book that we had kind of tackled. I know you had mentioned we tackled some of the common criticisms of Islam, but also kind of common criticisms of um, just generally widely held beliefs about, postmodernism, about, what is truth and, what is morality. I think all of those conversations are quite new in terms of the way that it's been phrased or the way that it's been mentioned. Um, I also, I really like the structure of the book. I think we started off by saying, you know, is there a God, right? And is there a God? Well, then, if it is, then is that God the God that Islam says it is? And if Islam says, it is a God, then is Islam the right religion? And if Islam is the right religion, then is Ahmadiyyat, the right interpretation of Islam? And then there's critiques about Ahmadiyyat, which I think haven't really been tackled or addressed as thoroughly, about, culture and religion, about, having a voice within Ahmadiyya, being a youth and having a voice, being a woman and having a voice. And then also kind of criticisms of like, what to look forward to in the future. How can, what can a average, questioning Muslim or questioning Ahmadi, what's their role? What can they do when they have doubts about, religion or about Islam or Ahmadiyya? Because, this will happen that now that, there are people like Adil, people like Suhail, people like Ali Amjad, Rizvi, that more and more people are going to start coming up with doubts. More and more people are going to have questions, specific questions. And this really, I think, offers some sort of food for thought for those questioning individuals.
Yeah, and of course, you're the one who put that structure together, and I really appreciate that. Again, that's your contribution, where it goes from God to religion, and then to Islam, and then to Ahmadiyyat, which is a nice flow to the book. And you're right. I think thinking about the specific to Ahmadiyyat, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the kind of questions that young people would have. Why is this happening this way, or am I not being heard, or how do I contribute, or how do I make my voice heard? Those kind of things, I think, were really important. And we had a chance to talk about those. And I think Shahrukh had specifically written on one such area about shura, for instance. How does that work? So it's a nice flow. And I think it that would be, anytime somebody writes a book, one of the questions to ask is, what is the need for this book? What is it bringing to the table? What is new about this book? So I would say that is one of the aspects. Yes, the arguments for the existence of God can be found in other books. Yes, the arguments about the religion or Islam even can be found in other books. But where are the places where it's bringing something new is, for instance, the witness testimony that we talked about, right? Does Islam give women lesser of a position in terms of witness testimony? And unfortunately, even some Muslims would get this wrong. And they would actually believe that in all cases, a woman's testimony is half of that of a man. And it's actually a misconception. Similarly, there are other areas where some kind of discussion was important to elaborate the subject properly and to really explore it. And I think that's where this is bringing something new to the table. And Shahrukh, if you want to jump into the part that you talked about, where the shura and other, those things, that would be nice.
So the points, I mean, the part where I worked on was primarily like proving the existence of God, and that was from we the book that was used was Hasti Barit Tala, which was a book by Hazrat Muslim anhu. And the argument he gave was the eighth argument, and he's like, this argument, basically he said that this is something that how you can see God, right? This argument proves that God exists, and like how you can actually physically see God, and that was his attributes, right? So for example, for the fact that God is Al-Hafiz, I mean, he is a protector, and how the examples that some of the examples that were presented, like the migration of Hazrat Khalid Masih the fourth, may Allah be his helper, right? How miraculously people were cured. He's a Shafi, right? And so there are different attributes in how they've come into that physically manifested themselves through these godly people, and how those incidents were extraordinary, and till this day no one's able to actually prove them, or no one's able to explain to us how did such a thing happen, and it happened over and over again. So that was one of the that was actually one of the parts that we worked on. And the second part was encouraging voices and talking about how much of a platform do we have as young people, right? How but that only comes when you actually understand the system. When we become a part of the system, because I come from, I wasn't a part of the system for a very, very long time, and obviously if I wasn't part of the system, I wouldn't know these things, right? But it's when I became a part of the system that I realized that we have Khudam Ulamdi Shura, we have Shura in general, where 25% of the people have to be below the age of 30, right? And we just see now, like since this pandemic, how Khudam Ulamdi has come up, right? So there are multiple platforms where we have the ability to raise our voices. For example, with me, and Rama, you know as well that a lot of times, because of our Ask FM, people reach out to us and they talk about their problems. They're like, this is an issue that I have. How do I go about solving it? And by the grace of God, we have been able to help a lot of people like that as well, right? And So
Yeah,
it's there's a lot of platforms there.
yeah, even nowadays, I mean, and I hope to be publishing this as we record on December 26th. I hope you are able to get access to it on December 26th, all of of our listeners and viewers. And
Mm,
so even nowadays, we have the different programs from Khudam al Ahmadiyya, like off the record, right, where people
mm,
are asking questions anonymously, and we're getting hundreds of people joining in and
mm,
hundreds of questions. I was just in a program a couple of days ago, and we had more than, I actually looked at the number of questions in the chat. There were more than 100, right? And so we are trying our best to keep it open, to have as many people as possible, whatever problems they have, whatever criticisms, whatever questions they have, we try to respond to it. And so that, I think, is a critical chapter that you worked on, encouraging voices. That was a critical chapter in this book, that talks about what are the avenues. And sometimes young people, they don't know the avenues because maybe they're raised in a way where even their parents don't know, or the environment is such where they never got to understand the system. But if you understand the system, there are lots of things within the system which can help you get your voices heard. So yeah, I mean, I hope this podcast is good enough of an advertisement for you, to have a chance to look at this book and to study it. And those of you who do get a chance to study it, please do write to us and let us know, and give us any kind of feedback, positive, negative. You found something good, something bad, let us know, and we would be more than happy to improve ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think one of the key
That
points that were actually in that section too was the testimony of a legend member herself,
Yeah.
right? It was a
Yeah.
straight up like head on, like, rebuttal to all those things that I was saying about the
Yeah, for
legend
sure.
community,
For
right?
sure.
But in addition to this, I just want to say that, till for a very, very long time, XMDs is not a new phenomenon. It's something which has
mhm,
been happening since the time of the Promised Messiah.
yeah,
The promises are, but there were people that would convert to Ahmadiyyat, and they would leave Ahmadiyyat, and they would raise allegations. The Prophet has addressed them over and over again, but
yeah,
no one really knows about them, right? If I was to talk about, like some of these people that had left Jamaat then, we wouldn't really know them unless we read those books,
yeah,
right? I'll give you an example, like Sheikh Abdul Rahman Misri Sahab, no one really knows about him, right? But everybody knows who the Prophet Islam is. Everybody knows who Hazrat Muslim Amrid al-Anhu is, right? But these were
mhm,
ex-Ahmadis at that time who were scholars and who had raised allegations against the Jamaat too, but no one really knows them. The only like famous ex-Ahmadis we might know is Maulvi Muhammad Ali Saab or Khwaja Kamaluddin Saab, or like a few more like that are like recently have surfaced. But
mhm,
it's a very it's not something new, and it's not something we've been talking. But everybody knows about the Jamaat. Everybody knows our Khulafah's names, but no one really knows the names of these people who have left the Jamaat.
yeah. So, Farhan, last thing that I wanted to mention was, what's where can we get this? Where can we get this book?
Well, the main place to get this book is booksonislam.org. Um, just go to booksonislam.org and find the book. It should be on the main page. It's featured nowadays, but if it's not, just in the search bar type in "Folly of Atheism," and you should be able to get a copy of this book. As far as Amazon is concerned, that should be coming very soon. Um, but Books on Islam would give it to you for cheaper, right? So if you want to get it from there. But if for Amazon, because there are so many fees that we have to pay, and the other kinds of costs, so it gets more expensive on Amazon. But it will be available if you want to find it on Amazon. Should be. This is a good reminder for me. I should pursue that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and then eventually, I do hope that a Kindle version of this book is also available. So that would be the cheapest option, probably just $5,
yeah,
depending on whatever they decide, but shouldn't be too much. That's also another project. I hope to see that happen in the next couple of months. So that's the first quarter of 2021 when I hope to have the ebook also available through Amazon. Yeah.
So this is all good news, and there are a lot of things to look forward to our listeners and our viewers. And if you do come across this book and you have feedback or you have suggestions for how we could make it better, I'd be happy to do a part two of this as well. So if there are more questions or more doubts, the place to reach us always is at theconvictionproject@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.theconvictionproject.com. So this is The Conviction Project, where we leave you with no doubts about Islam.